Stargate Book presents The Law of Success, Lesson 1, The Master's Mind by Napoleon Hill, audiobook edition and copyright 2025 by Stargate Book. All rights are reserved for this edition. Teaching, for the first time in the history of the world, the true philosophy on which the all-personal success. Personal statement by the author. Some 30 years ago, a young clergyman named Gonzales announced in Chicago newspapers that he would preach a sermon the following Sunday morning entitled, "What I Would Do If I Had $1 Million." The announcement caught the attention of Philip D. Armour, the wealthy king of packaging, who decided to listen to the sermon. In his sermon, Dr. Gonzales envisioned a great school of technology where young men and women could be taught how to succeed in life by developing the ability to think in practical, rather than theoretical terms, where they would be taught to learn by doing. "If I had $1 million," said the young preacher, "I would start such a school." After the sermon ended, Mr. Armour walked down the aisle to the pulpit, introduced himself and said, "Young man, I believe you can do everything you said you could do, and if you come to my office tomorrow morning, I will give you the $1 million you need." There is always plenty of capital for those who can create practical plans for using it. This was the beginning of Armour Institute of Technology, one of the most practical schools in the country. The school was born in the imagination of a young man who would never have been heard of outside the community in which he preached had it not been for the imagination plus capital of Philip D. Armour. Every great railroad, every outstanding financial institution, and every mammoth commercial enterprise, and every great invention began in one person's imagination. F. W. Woolworth created the 5 and 10 cent store plan in his imagination before it became a reality and made him a multimillionaire. Thomas A. Edison created the talking machine, the moving picture machine, and the incandescent electric light bulb, and dozens of other useful inventions in his imagination before they became reality. During the Chicago fire, dozens of merchants whose stores had gone up in smoke stood by the smoldering embers of their old workplaces, grieving their loss. Many of them decided to leave for other cities and start anew. In the group was Marshall Field, who saw in his imagination the largest retail store in the world, standing in the same spot as his old store, which was then nothing more than a ruined mass of smoking beams. That store became reality. Fortunate is the young man or woman who learns early in life to use his or her imagination, and doubly so in this age of greater opportunity. Imagination is a faculty of the mind that can be cultivated, developed, extended, and expanded by use. If this were not true, this course on the 15 Laws of Success would never have been created, because it was first conceived in the author's imagination, from the simple seed of an idea that was sown by a chance observation of the late Andrew Carnegie. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever your occupation, there is room to make yourself more useful, and in this way more productive, by developing and using your imagination. Success in this world is always a matter of individual effort, yet you will only deceive yourself if you believe that you can succeed without the cooperation of other people. Success is a matter of individual effort only to the extent that each person has to decide in his or her own mind what one wants. This involves the use of imagination. From this point on, achieving success is a matter of skillfully and tactfully inducing others to cooperate. Before you can secure the cooperation of others, indeed, before you have the right to demand or expect cooperation from other people, you must first show a willingness to cooperate with them. That is why the 8th lesson of this course, the habit of doing more than you pay. 4. Is one who should have your serious and thoughtful attention. The law on which this lesson is based would, in itself, virtually ensure success for all who practice it in everything they do. In the last pages of this introduction, you will observe a personal analysis chart in which 10 well-known men have been analyzed for your study and comparison. Look carefully at this chart and note the danger points that signify failure for those who do not observe these signs. Of the 10 men analyzed, 8 are known to be successful, while 2 can be considered failures. Study carefully why these 2 men failed. Next, study yourself. In the 2 columns they left blank for this purpose, give yourself a grade on each of the 15 laws of success at the beginning of this course. At the end of the course, give yourself a grade again and observe the improvements you have made. The purpose of the Law of Success course is to enable you to discover how you can become more capable in your chosen field of work. For this purpose, you will be analyzed and all your qualities ranked so that you can organize and use them to the best advantage. You may not like the job you are engaged in now. There are 2 ways to get out of that job. One way is to take little interest in what you are doing, aiming simply to do enough to get by. Very soon you will find a way out, because the demand for your services will cease. The other and better way is to make yourself so useful and efficient in what you are doing now that you will attract the favorable attention of those who have the power to promote you into a more responsible job of your liking. It is your privilege to choose sides. We'll proceed. Once again, you are reminded of the importance of Lesson 9 of this course, with the help of which you can avail yourself of this better way of promoting yourself. Thousands of people have passed over the great Calumet copper mine without discovering it. Only one lone man used his imagination, dug a few feet into the earth, investigated and discovered the richest copper deposit on earth. You and every other person walk at one time or another above Calumet's mine. Discovery is a matter of investigation and the use of imagination. This course on the 15 Laws of Success can lead you to your Calumet, and you may be surprised when you discover that you were standing right on top of this rich mine in the work in which you are now engaged. In his lecture on Acres of Diamonds, Russell Conwell tells us that we need not look for opportunities in the distance, that we can find them right where we are. This is a truth worth remembering. Napoleon Hill, author of The Law of Success. This course is the result of a careful analysis of the life work of more than 100 men and women who have achieved unusual success in their respective callings. The course author has spent more than 2 decades collecting, classifying, testing, and organizing the 15 laws on which the course is based. Content of this introductory lecture: Power, what it is and how to create and use it. Cooperation: the psychology of cooperative effort and how to use it constructively. The master mind: how it is created through harmony of purpose and effort between 2 or more people. Henry Ford, Thomas A. Edison, and Harvey S. Firestone. The secret of their power and wealth. The Big Six: how did they make the law of the master mind pay off with a profit of more than $25 billion per year? Imagination: how to stimulate it so that it creates practical plans and dewy ideas. Telepathy: how thought passes from one mind to another through the ether. Each brain is a thought transmission and reception station. How marketers and public speakers sense or tune in to the thoughts of their audience. Vibration, described by Dr. Alexander Graham. Bell, inventor of the long-distance telephone. AIR and ETHER, how they carry vibrations. How and why ideas flash in the mind from unknown sources. History of the philosophy of the Law of Success, covering a period of more than 25 years of scientific research and experimentation. Justice Elbert H. Gary reads, approves and adopts the course, Law of Success. Andrew Carnegie, responsible for starting the Law of Success course. The so-called spiritualism explained. Organized effort, the source of all power. How to analyze oneself. How a small fortune was made out of an old, worked, and worthless farmhouse. There is a gold mine in your current occupation if you follow the directions and look for it. There is a lot of capital ready for the development of any practical idea or plan that can be created. Some reasons why people fail. Because Henry Ford is the most powerful man on earth, and how others can use the principles that give him his power. Why some people antagonize others without knowing it. The effect of sexual contact as a mind stimulant and health builder. What happens in the religious orgy known as revival. What we learned from the Nature Bible. Chemistry of the mind, how it will make or break you. What is meant by psychological moment in salesmanship. The mind devitalizes how to recharge it. The value and significance of harmony in any cooperative effort. What does Henry Ford's legacy consist of? The answer. This is the era of mergers and highly organized cooperative effort. Woodrow Wilson had the mastermind law in mind in his plan for a League of Nations. Success is a matter of negotiating tactfully with other people. Every human being possesses at least two distinct personalities, one destructive and one constructive. Education generally misunderstood as instruction or memorization of rules. It actually means development from within of the human mind through performance and use. Two methods of knowledge gathering, through personal experience and by assimilating knowledge gained through the experience of others. Personal Analysis by Henry Ford, Benjamin. Franklin, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Woodrow Wilson, Napoleon Bonaparte, Calvin Coolidge, and Jesse James. Visit After Class by the author. Time is a masterworker who heals the wounds of temporary defeat and equalizes inequalities and rights the wrongs of the world. There is nothing impossible with time. The Law of Success. Lesson 1. The Master's Mind. You can do it if you believe you can do it. This is a course on the fundamentals of success. Success is largely a matter of adapting oneself to ever-changing and diverse life environments in a spirit of harmony and composure. Harmony is based on understanding the forces that constitute one's environment. Therefore, this course is actually a program that can be followed directly to success because it helps the student to interpret, understand, and make the most of these environmental forces of life. Before you start reading the Law of Success lectures, you should know something of the history of the course. You should know exactly what the course promises to those who take it until they have assimilated the laws and principles on which it is based. You should know its limitations as well as its possibilities, as an aid in your struggle for a place in the world. From an entertainment standpoint, the Law of Success course would be a poor second to most monthly periodicals of the snappy story variety that can be found on newsstands today. The course was created for the serious-minded person who devotes at least part of his or her time to the business of success in life. The author of the Law of Success course did not intend to compete with those who write purely for entertainment purposes. The author's goal in preparing this course was twofold in nature. Namely, firstly, to help the serious student discover what his weaknesses are, and secondly, to help him create a definitive plan to overcome these weaknesses. The most successful men and women on earth had to correct some weaknesses in their personalities before they began to succeed. The most important of these weaknesses that stand between men and women and success are intolerance, cupidity, greed, jealousy, suspicion, vindictiveness, egotism, presumption, the tendency to reap where one has not sown, and the habit of spending more than one earns. All of these common enemies of humanity, and many others not mentioned here, are covered by the law of the successful course in such a way that any person of reasonable intelligence can master them with little effort or discomfort. You should know from the outset that the Law of Success course has long since passed its experimental state. that it already has to its credit a record of achievement that is worthy of serious reflection and analysis. You should also know that the Law of Success course has been examined and approved by some of the most practical minds of this generation. The course The Law of Success was first used as a lecture and has been given by its author in virtually every city and many of the smaller locations throughout the United States over a period of more than 7 years. Perhaps you were one of the hundreds of thousands of people who heard this lecture. During these lectures, the author attended the audience for the purpose of interpreting the reaction of those listening to the lecture, and in this way learned exactly what effect it had on people. As a result of this study and analysis, many changes were made. The first great victory was achieved for the Law of Success philosophy when it was used by the author as the basis of a course by which 3,000 men and women were trained as a sales army. Through this training, they were able to earn more than $1 million, 1,000 aksars for themselves, and paid the author $30,000, 30,000 tars, for his services over a period of about 6 months. The individuals and small groups of salespeople who have found success with the help of this course are too numerous to mention in this introduction. But the number is large, and the benefits they have derived from the course have been sure. The philosophy of the Law of Success was brought to the attention of the late Don R. Mellett, former publisher of the Canton, Ohio Daily News, who formed a partnership to step down as publisher of the Canton Daily News and take over the author's business when the latter was assassinated on July 16, 1926. Before his death, Mr. Mellett had made arrangements with Judge Elbert H. Gary, who was then chairman of the board of directors of the United States Street Corporation, to present the Law of Success course to every employee of the Street Corporation at a total cost of something like $150,000. You will observe, in this general introduction to the course, some technical terms that may not be clear to you. Do not allow this to bother you. Do not try to understand these terms in the first reading. They will become clear to you after reading the rest of the course. This entire introduction is intended only as background for the other 15 lectures in the course, and you should read it as such. You will not be scrutinized on this introduction, but you should read it many times, since with each reading you will get a thought or idea from it that you did not get in the previous readings. In this introduction, you will find a description of a recently discovered law of psychology, which is the true cornerstone of all outstanding personal achievements. This law has been called by the author a master mind, that is, a mind that is or developed through the harmonious cooperation of 2 or more people who ally themselves for the purpose of accomplishing a given task. If you are engaged in sales activity, you can profitably experiment with this law of the master mind in your daily work. It has been found that a group of 6 or 7 salespeople can use this law so effectively that their sales can be increased to incredible proportions. Life insurance is supposed to be the hardest thing in the world to sell. This should not be true with an established necessity like life insurance, but it is. In spite of this fact, a small group of men working for the Prudential Life Insurance Company, whose sales are mostly small policies, formed a small friendly group for the purpose of experimenting with the law of the master mind, with the result that each man in the group wrote more insurance during the first 3 months of the experiment than he had ever written in an entire year before. What can be accomplished with the help of this principle by a small group of intelligent life insurance salesmen who have learned to apply the law of the master mind will sway the imagination of the most optimistic and imaginative person. The same can be said of other sales groups that are engaged in selling goods and other forms of service that are more tangible than life insurance. Keep that in mind as you read this introduction to the Law of Success course. And it is not unreasonable to expect that this introduction alone can give you enough understanding of the law to change the entire course of your life. It is the personalities behind an enterprise that determine the measure of the enterprise's success. Modify these personalities so that they are more pleasant and more attractive to the company's customers, and the company will prosper. In any one of the large cities of the United States, one can buy goods of a similar nature and price in dozens of stores, but one will always find an outstanding store that does more business than all the others. And the reason for this is that behind that store is a man, or several men, who have taken care of the personalities of those who come in contact with the public. People buy personalities as much as they buy merchandise, and one has to wonder if they are not more influenced by the personalities they come in contact with than by the merchandise. Life insurance has been reduced to such a scientific basis that the cost of insurance does not depend on who buys it. Yet of the hundreds of life insurance companies doing business, less than a dozen do most of the business in the United States. Why? Personalities. 99 out of every 100 people who buy life insurance policies do not know what is in their policies, and more surprisingly, do not seem to care. What they really buy is the pleasant personality of some man or woman who knows the value of cultivating that personality. Your business in life, or at least the most important part of it, is to achieve success. Success, in the meaning of that term as covered in this course on the 15 Laws of Success, is the violation of other people's rights. Regardless of what your main purpose in life is, you will achieve it by cultivating a pleasant personality and after learning the delicate art of allying with others in a given endeavor without friction or envy. One of life's greatest problems, if not, in fact, the greatest, is learning the art of negotiating harmoniously with others. This course was created for the purpose of teaching people how to negotiate their way through life with harmony and composure, free from the destructive effects of disagreement and friction that lead millions of people to misery, want, and failure every year. With this statement of the purpose of the course, you should be able to approach the classes with the feeling that a complete transformation is about to take place in your personality. You cannot enjoy outstanding success in life without power, and you can never enjoy power without sufficient personality to influence other people to cooperate with you in a spirit of harmony. This course shows you step by step how to develop such a personality. Lesson by lesson, what follows is a statement of what you can expect to receive from the 15 Laws of Success. A defined main goal will teach you how to save the wasted effort that most people spend in trying to find their life work. This lesson will show you how to eliminate aimlessness forever and fix your heart and hand on a defined and well-conceived purpose as your life work. Self-confidence will help you master the 6 basic fears with which every person is cursed. Fear of poverty, fear of illness, fear of old age, fear of criticism, fear of losing someone's love, and fear of death. It will teach you the difference between selfishness and real self-confidence that is based on definite and usable knowledge. The habit of saving will teach you how to systematically distribute your income so that a certain percentage of it steadily accumulates, thus forming one of the greatest known sources of personal power. No one can succeed in life without saving money. There is no exception to this rule, and no one can escape it. Initiative and leadership will show you how to become a leader instead of a follower in your chosen field of endeavor. It will develop in you the leadership instinct that will gradually lead you to gravitate toward the top in all the enterprises in which you participate. Imagination will stimulate your mind so that you can conceive new ideas and develop new plans that will help you achieve the object of your defined main purpose. This lesson will teach you how to build new houses out of old stones, so to speak. It will show you how to create new ideas from old, well-known concepts and how to put the old ideas to new uses. This lesson alone is the equivalent of a very practical sales course and is sure to prove a real gold mine of knowledge for the person who is serious. Enthusiasm will enable you to saturate everyone you come in contact with interest in you and your ideas. Enthusiasm is the foundation of a pleasant personality, and you must have such a personality to influence others to cooperate with you. Self-control is the barbell with which you control your enthusiasm and direct it where you want it to go. This lesson. will teach you, in the most practical way, how to become the master of your destiny, the captain of your soul. The habit of doing more than you pay is one of the most important lessons of the law of the success course. It will teach you how to take advantage of the law of growing returns, which will ultimately ensure a return in money far more than proportional to the service you render. No one can become a true leader in any walk of life without practicing the habit of doing more work and better work than they are paid to do. Pleasant personality is the fulcrum on which you must place the crowbar of your efforts, and when placed so intelligently, it will enable you to remove mountains of obstacles. This lesson alone has made dozens of masters, vendors. He has developed leaders overnight. It will teach you how to transform your personality so that you can adapt to any environment or any other personality, so that you can easily dominate. Accurate thinking is one of the important cornerstones of any lasting success. This lesson teaches you how to separate facts from mere information. It teaches you how to organize known facts into two classes: those that are important and those that are unimportant. It teaches you how to determine what is an important fact. It teaches you how to construct definite work plans in pursuit of any vocation from facts. Concentration teaches you to focus your attention on one topic at a time until you have worked out practical plans for mastering that topic. It will teach you how to ally with others so that you have the use of all their knowledge to support you in your plans and purposes. They will give you a working knowledge of the forces around you and show you how to harness and use these forces to further your interests. Cooperation will teach you the value of teamwork in everything you do. In this lesson, you will be taught how to apply the law of the master mind, described in this introduction and lesson 2 of this course. This lesson will show you how to coordinate your efforts with those of others, so as to eliminate friction, jealousy, conflict, envy, and greed. You will learn how to make use of all that others have learned about the work in which you are engaged. Making profits from failure will teach you how to make stepping stones from all your past and future mistakes and failures. It will teach you the difference between failure and temporary defeat, a difference that is very big and very important. It will teach you how to profit from your failures and those of others. Tolerance will teach you how to avoid the disastrous effects of racial and religious prejudices that mean defeat for millions of people who become entangled in silly arguments over topics, thus poisoning their own minds and closing the door to reason and inquiry. This lesson is the twin sister to the one on accurate thinking, for the reason that no one can become an accurate thinker without practicing tolerance. Intolerance closes the book of knowledge and writes on the cover, "Finis, I have learned everything." Intolerance makes enemies of those who should be friends. It destroys opportunities and fills the mind with doubt, distrust, and prejudice. Practice of the Golden Rule will teach you how to make use of this great universal law of human conduct in such a way that harmonious cooperation is easily achieved by any individual or group of individuals. Lack of understanding of the law on which the Golden Rule philosophy is based is one of the main causes of the failure of millions of people who remain in misery, poverty, and lack throughout their lives. This lesson has nothing to do with religion, in any form, nor with sectarianism, nor with any of the other lessons in this Law of Success course. When you have mastered these 15 laws and made them your own, as you can do over a period of 15 to 30 weeks, you will be ready to develop sufficient personal power to ensure the attainment of your principle-defined goal. The purpose of these 15 laws is to develop or help you organize all the knowledge you have and all the knowledge you will acquire in the future so that you can transform this knowledge into power. You should read the Law of Success course with a notebook at your side, because you will observe that ideas will begin to flash in your mind as you read about the ways and means of using these laws in furthering your interests. You should also start teaching these laws to those in whom you are most interested, for it is a well-known fact that the more one tries to teach a subject, the more one learns about that subject. A man who has a family of young boys and girls can so indelibly fix these 15 laws of success in their minds that this teaching will change the whole course of their lives. The man with a family should interest his wife in studying this course with him, for reasons that will be clear before you have completed reading this introduction. Power is one of the 3 basic objects of human endeavor. Power is of 2 classes: that which develops, through the coordination of natural physical laws, and that which is developed by organizing and classifying knowledge. The power that grows in organized knowledge is the most important because it puts in man's possession a tool with which he can transform, redirect, and to some extent harness and use the other form of power. The goal of this reading course is to mark the path by which the student can travel with confidence in collecting the facts he may wish to weave into his fabric of knowledge. There are 2 main methods of collecting knowledge, namely, through the study, classification, and assimilation of facts that have been organized by other people, and through one's own process of collecting, organizing, and classifying facts, generally called personal experience. This lecture deals mainly with the ways and means of studying facts and data collected and classified by other people. The state of advancement known as civilization is but a measure of the knowledge the race has accumulated. This knowledge is of 2 classes: mental and physical. Among the useful knowledge organized by man, he has discovered and catalogued the 82 physical elements of which all material forms in the universe are composed. With study and analysis and accurate measurements, the human discovered the size of the material part of the universe, represented by planets, suns, and stars, some of which are known to be more than 10 million times larger than the tiny Earth on which it lives. On the other hand, man has discovered the smallness of the physical forms that make up the universe by reducing the 80 or so physical elements to molecules, atoms, and finally to the smallest particle, the electron. An electron cannot be seen. It is but a center of force consisting of a positive or a negative. The electron is the beginning of everything physical in nature: molecules, atoms, and electrons. To understand both the detail and the perspective of the process by which knowledge is collected, organized, and classified, it seems essential for the student to begin with the smallest and simplest particles of physical matter, because these are the ABC with which nature has built the entire structure of the physical part of the universe. The molecule is composed of atoms, which are said to be small, invisible particles of matter that continuously rotate at the speed of lightning, exactly the same principle by which the Earth revolves around the Sun. These small particles of matter, known as atoms, spinning in a continuous circuit in the molecule, are said to consist of electrons, the smallest particles of physical matter. As mentioned above, the electron is nothing but 2 forms of force. The electron is uniform, of one class, size, and nature. Thus, in a grain of sand or a drop of water is duplicated the entire principle on which the entire universe operates. How wonderful! How wonderful! You can get an idea of the magnitude of it all the next time you eat a meal, remembering that every food you eat, the plate on which you eat it, the tableware, and the table itself are ultimately nothing but a collection of electrons. In the world of physical matter, whether we look at the largest star floating in the heavens or the smallest grain of sand found on Earth, the object under observation is nothing more than an organized collection of molecules, atoms, and electrons spinning around each other at inconceivable speeds. Every particle of physical matter is in a continuous state of highly agitated motion. Nothing is ever still, although almost all physical matter may appear to the physical eye to be motionless. There is no such thing as solid physical matter. The hardest piece of steel is nothing more than an organized mass of moving molecules, atoms, and electrons. Moreover, The electrons in a piece of steel are of the same nature and move at the same speed as the electrons in gold, silver, brass, or pewter. The 82 forms of physical matter appear to be different from one another, and they are different because they are made up of different combinations of atoms, although the electrons in these atoms are positive and some are negative, meaning that some carry a positive electrification charge, while others carry a negative charge. Through the science of chemistry, matter can be broken down into atoms that are, in themselves, immutable. The 82 elements are created through and because of the combination and change of the positions of atoms. To illustrate the modus operandi of chemistry through which this change of atomic position is accomplished, in terms of modern science, add 4 electrons, 2 positive and 2 negative, to the hydrogen atom, and you have the element lithium. Remove from the lithium atom, composed of 3 positive and 3 negative electrons, 1 positive and 1 negative electron, and you have a helium atom, composed of 2 positive and 2 negative electrons. Thus it can be seen that the 82 physical elements of the universe differ only in the number of electrons that make up their atoms, and the number and arrangement of these atoms in the molecules of each element. For example, a mercury atom contains 80 positive charges, electrons, in its nucleus, and 80 external negative charges, electrons. If the chemist were to expel 2 of its positive electrons, it would immediately become the metal known as platinum. If the chemist could then take it one step further and remove 1 negative planetary electron from it, the atom of mercury would then have lost 2 positive electrons and 1 negative electron, that is, 1 positive charge overall. Thus, it would retain 79 positive charges in the nucleus and 79 negative external electrons, thus becoming gold. The formula by which this electronic change can be produced has been the subject of diligent research by alchemists of all times and modern chemists today. It is a fact known to every chemist that literally tens of thousands of synthetic substances can be composed of only 4 types of atoms, namely hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. Differences in the number of electrons in atoms give them qualitative, chemical differences, although all atoms of any one element are chemically the same. Differences in the number and special arrangement of these atoms, in groups of molecules, constitute both physical and chemical differences in substances, i.e., compounds. Very different substances are produced by combinations of exactly the same kinds of atoms, but in different proportions. Take from a molecule of certain substances a single atom, and they can be transformed from a compound necessary for life and growth into a deadly poison. Phosphorus is an element and therefore contains but one kind of atom, but some phosphorus is yellow and some is red, varying with the spatial distribution of the atoms in the molecules that make up phosphorus. It can be stated as a literal truth that the atom is the universal particle with which nature builds all material forms, from a grain of sand to the largest star floating in space. The atom is the brick with which nature builds an oak or pine tree, a sandstone or granite rock, a mouse or an elephant. Some of the ablest thinkers have reasoned that the earth we live on, and every material particle on earth, began with 2 atoms attaching to each other, and through hundreds of millions of years of flight through space, they continued to contact and accumulate other atoms until, step by step, the earth was formed. This, they point out, would explain the various and different layers of the earth's substances, such as coal beds, iron ore deposits, gold and silver deposits, copper deposits, etc. They reason that as the Earth whirled through space, it came into contact with groups of various types of nebulae, or atoms, which it readily appropriated through the law of magnetic attraction. There is much to be seen in the composition of the Earth's surface to support this theory, although there can be no positive evidence for its soundness. These facts concerning the smallest analyzable particles of matter have been briefly referred to as a starting point, from which we will endeavor to test how to develop and apply the law of power. It has been noted that all matter is in a constant state of vibration or motion, that the molecule is composed of fast-moving particles called atoms, which in turn are composed of fast-moving particles called electrons. The vibrant fluid of matter. In every particle of matter there is an invisible fluid or force that makes atoms spin around each other at an inconceivable speed. This fluid is a form of energy that has never been analyzed. So far, it has baffled the entire scientific world. Many scientists believe it is the same energy we call electricity. Others prefer to call it vibration. Some researchers believe that the rate of speed at which this force, call it what you will, moves largely determines the nature of the visible outward appearance of physical objects in the universe. A rate of vibration of this fluid energy causes what is known as sound. The human ear can only perceive sound that is produced by 32,000 to 38,000 vibrations per second. Even higher up the scale, vibrations begin to register in the form of light. 3 million vibrations per second create violet light. Above this number, vibrations emit ultraviolet rays, which are invisible to the naked eye, and other invisible radiation. And even higher up the scale, how high no one seems to know at present, the vibrations create the power by which man thinks. It is the author's conviction that the fluid portion of all vibrations, from which all known forms of energy grow, is universal in nature, that the fluid portion of sound is the same as the fluid portion of light, the difference in effect between sound and light being only a difference in speed of vibration. Also that the fluid portion of thought is exactly the same as that of sound, heat, and light, except for the number of vibrations per second. Just as there is only one form of physical matter, of which the Earth and all other planets, suns, and stars are composed, the electron, so there is only one form of fluid energy, which causes all matter to remain in a constant state of rapid motion. AR and ether. The vast space between the suns, moons, stars, and other planets of the universe is filled with a form of energy known as ether. It is this author's belief that the fluid energy that keeps all matter particles moving is the same as the universal fluid known as ether that fills all space in the universe. Within a certain distance from the Earth's surface, estimated by some to be about 50 miles, exists what is called air, which is a gaseous substance composed of oxygen and nitrogen. Air is a conductor of sound vibrations, but it is not a conductor of light, and the higher vibrations, which are carried by the ether. The ether is a conductor of all vibrations, from sound to thought. Air is a localized substance that performs, primarily, the service of supplying all animal and plant life with oxygen and nitrogen, without which neither could exist. Nitrogen is one of the main necessities of plant life and oxygen one of the mainstays of animal life. Near the top of very high mountains, the air becomes very light because it contains little nitrogen, which is why plant life cannot exist there. On the other hand, the light air found at high altitudes is oxygen, which is the main reason why tubercular patients are sent to high altitudes. Even this brief statement regarding molecules, atoms, electrons, air, ether, and the like can be heavy reading for the student. But as will be seen in a moment, this introduction plays an essential part as the foundation of this lecture. Do not be discouraged if the description of this foundation seems to have none of the exciting effects of a modern fictional tale. You are seriously engaged in discovering what powers are available to you and how to organize and apply those powers. To successfully complete this discovery, you must combine determination, persistence, and a well-defined desire to gather and organize knowledge. The late Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the long-distance telephone and one of the accepted authorities on the subject of vibration, is introduced here in support of this author's theories regarding the subject of vibration. Suppose you have the power to vibrate an iron rod with any desired frequency in a dark room. At first, when it vibrates slowly, its movement will be indicated by only one sense, that of touch. As soon as the vibration increases, a low sound will emanate from it and appeal to two senses. At about 32,000 vibrations per second, the sound will be loud and jarring, but at 40,000 vibrations it will be silent, and the rod's movements will not be perceived by touch. Its movements will not be perceived by any ordinary human sense. From this point until about 1,500,000 vibrations per second, we have no sense that can appreciate any effect of the intervening vibrations. After reaching this stage, movement is indicated first by the sense of temperature, and then, when the bar turns red, by the sense of sight. At 3 million, it emits violet light. Above that, it emits ultraviolet and other invisible radiation, some of which can be perceived by the instruments we employ. It has now occurred to me that there must be much to learn about the effect of those vibrations in the great void in which ordinary human senses are unable to hear, see, or perceive movement. The power to send wireless messages through the vibrations of the ether lies in that gap, but the gap is so large that it seems there must be much more. We need to practically make machines to provide new senses, as wireless instruments do. Can it be said, when thinking about this great gap, that there are not many forms of vibrations that can give us results as wonderful as, or even more wonderful than, wireless waves? It seems to me that in this gap are the vibrations we have assumed to be emitted by our brains and nerve cells when we think. But then again, they may be higher up the scale beyond the vibrations that ultraviolet rays produce. Author's note. The last sentence suggests this author's theory. Do we need a wire to carry these vibrations? Won't they pass through the ether without a wire, just as wireless waves do? How will they be perceived by the recipient? Will he hear a series of signals, or will he find that another man's thoughts have entered his brain? We can indulge in some speculation based on what we know about wireless waves, which, as I said, are all we can recognize of a vast array of vibrations that theoretically must exist. If thought waves are similar to wireless waves, they must pass from the brain and flow endlessly through the world and the universe. The body and skull and other solid obstacles would form no obstruction to their passage, for they pass through the ether surrounding the molecules of every substance, no matter how solid and dense. Do you wonder if there would not be constant interference and confusion if other people's thoughts flowed into our brains and deposited their thoughts that did not originate from ourselves? How do you know that other men's thoughts do not interfere with yours now? I have noticed many phenomena of mental disorder that I have never been able to explain. For example, there is the inspiration or discouragement that a speaker experiences when addressing the audience. I have experienced this many times in my life and have never been able to define exactly the physical causes. Many recent scientific discoveries, in my opinion, point to a day not far off, perhaps, when humans will read each other's thoughts, when thoughts will be transmitted directly from brain to brain without the intervention of speech, writing, or any of the current known methods of communication. It is not unreasonable to wait for a time when we will see without eyes, hear without ears, and speak without tongues. In short, the hypothesis that the mind can communicate directly with the mind is based on the theory that thought or life force is a form of electrical perturbation, which can be taken by induction and transmitted at a distance either through a wire or simply through the all-pervading ether, as in the case of wireless telegraph waves. There are many analogies suggesting that thinking has the nature of an electrical disorder. A nerve, which is of the same substance as the brain, is an excellent conductor of electric current. When we first passed an electric current through the nerves of a dead man, we were shocked and amazed to see him sit up and move. The electrified nerves produced a contraction of muscles very similar to that of life. Nerves seem to act on muscles much as electric current acts on an electromagnet. The current magnetizes an iron bar placed perpendicular to it, and the nerves produce, through the intangible current of life force through them, the contraction of the muscle fibers that are arranged perpendicular to them. It would be possible to cite many reasons why thought and life force can be considered to be of the same nature as electricity. Electric current is believed to be a wave motion of the ether, the hypothetical substance that fills all space and pervades all substances. We believe that there must be ether because without it, electric current could not pass through a vacuum or sunlight through space. It is reasonable to believe that only wave motion of a similar character can produce the phenomena of thought and life force. We can assume that the cells of the brain act like a battery and that the current produced flows along the nerves. But does it end there? Does it not pass out of the body in waves that flow into the world without being perceived by our senses, just as wireless waves passed without being perceived before Hertz and others discovered their existence? Every mind is a transmitting and receiving station. This author has demonstrated too many times to enumerate, at least to his satisfaction, that every human brain is a transmitting and receiving station of thought frequency vibrations. If this theory turned out to be a fact, and reasonable methods of control were established, imagine the role it would play in the collection, classification, and organization of knowledge. The possibility, much less the probability of such a reality baffles the mind of man. Thomas Paine was one of the great minds of the American Revolutionary period. To him, perhaps more than to any other person, we owe both the beginning and the happy ending of the Revolution, for it was his keen mind that helped both draft the Declaration of Independence and convince the singers of that document to translate it into terms of reality. Speaking of the source of his great storehouse of knowledge, Paine describes it as follows: anyone who has made observations on the state of advancement of the human mind, observing his own, cannot have failed to observe that there are two distinct classes of what are called thoughts: those which we produce in ourselves through reflection and the act of thinking, and those which enter of their own accord into the mind. I have always made it a rule to treat these voluntary visitors with civility, taking care to examine, as best I could, whether they were worthy of being entertained. And it is from them that I have. As for the learning that each person gains from schooling, it serves only as a little capital to put him on the road to begin learning on his own later. Every person who learns is ultimately his own teacher. The reason for this is that principles cannot be imprinted in memory. Their place of mental residence is the understanding, and they are never so lasting as when they begin by conception. In the words above, Paine, the great American patriot and philosopher, described the experience that at one time or another is every person's experience, who is unfortunate enough not to have received positive proof that thoughts and even complete ideas pop up in the mind from external sources. What means of transportation is there for these visitors, if not the ether? The ether fills the boundless space of the universe. It is the means of transport of all known forms of vibration, such as sound, light, and heat. Why should it not also be the transport medium of thought vibration? Every mind, or brain, is directly connected to every other brain by means of the ether. Any thought released by any brain can be instantly picked up and interpreted by all other brains that are in relationship with the sending brain. This author is as sure of this fact as he is that the chemical formula of H2O will produce water. Imagine, if you can, what part this principle plays in every aspect of life. Nor is the likelihood that the ether is a mind-to-mind transporter of thought the most astounding of its performances. It is this author's belief that every thought vibration released by any brain is picked up by the ether and kept in motion in circular wavelengths corresponding to the intensity of the energy used in its release. That these vibrations remain in motion forever, that they are one of the two sources from which the thoughts that burst in our minds emanate, the other source being the direct and immediate contact through the ether with the brain that releases the thought vibration. Thus it will be seen that if this theory is a fact, the boundless space of the entire universe is now and will continue to literally become a mental library in which all the thoughts released by humanity can be found. The author is here laying the foundation for one of the most important assumptions enumerated in the lesson, self-reliance, a fact that the student should keep in mind as he approaches that lesson. This is a lesson in organized knowledge. Most of the useful knowledge to which the human race has become heir has been preserved and carefully recorded in the Nature Bible. Flipping through the pages of this unalterable Bible, man has read the history of the terrible struggle through which the present civilization has grown. The pages of this Bible consist of the physical elements of which this Earth and the other planets are composed, and the ether that fills all of space. By turning the pages written on stone and covered near the surface of this land on which he lives, man has discovered the bones, skeletons, footprints, and other unmistakable evidence of the history of animal life on this land, planted there for his enlightenment and guidance by the hand of Mother Nature through incredible periods of time. The evidence is clear and unequivocal. The great stone pages of Nature's Bible, represented by the ether, constitute an authentic source of communication between the Creator and man. This Bible was started before man had reached the thinking stage. In fact, before man had reached the amoeba, one-celled animal stage of development. This Bible is above and beyond the power of man to alter. Moreover, it tells its story not in the ancient dead languages or hieroglyphics of semi-wild races, but in a universal language that all who have eyes can read. Nature's Bible, from which we have derived all knowledge worth knowing, is a Bible that no man can alter or tamper with in any way. The most wonderful discovery man has ever made is that of the recently discovered radio principle, which operates through the help of the ether, an important part of Nature's Bible. Imagine that the ether picks up the ordinary vibration of sound and transforms it from an audio frequency into a radio frequency, brings it to a properly tuned receiving station, and there transforms it back into its original form of audio frequency, all within the space of a second. It should surprise no one that such a force can pick up the vibration of thou and keep that vibration moving forever. The established and known fact of the instantaneous transmission of sound through the agency of the ether by means of the modern radio apparatus removes the theory of the transmission of the vibration of thought from mind to mind, from the possible to the probable. The mother mind. We now come to the next step in describing the ways and means by which useful knowledge can be collected, classified, and organized through the harmonious alliance of two or more minds, from which a mother mind grows. The term mastermind is abstract and has no counterpart in the field of known facts, except for a small number of people who have made a careful study of the effect of one mind on other minds. This author has searched in vain through all available textbooks and essays on the subject of the human mind, but nowhere has the slightest reference been found to the principle described here as the mastermind. The term first came to the author's attention through an interview with Andrew Carnegie in the manner described in Lesson 2. Chemistry of the mind. It is this author's belief that the mind is made up of the same universal fluid energy that constitutes the ether that fills the universe. It is a fact well known to the layman as well as to the man of scientific inquiry that some minds clash the moment they come into contact with each other, while other minds show a natural affinity for each other. Between the two extremes of natural antagonism and natural affinity that arise from the meeting or contact of minds, there is a wide range of possibilities for variable reactions of mind on mind. Some minds are so naturally adapted to each other that love at first sight is the inevitable result of contact. Who has not known such an experience? In other cases, the minds are so antagonistic that a violent mutual dislike occurs at first meeting. These results occur without a word being spoken and without the slightest sign of any of the usual causes of love and hate acting as a stimulus. It is very likely that the mind consists of a fluid or substance or energy, call it what you will, similar, if not exactly the same substance, to the ether. When two minds get close enough to each other to form a contact, the mixing of units of this mind stuff, let's call it the electrons of the ether, causes a chemical reaction and initiates vibrations that affect the two individuals in pleasant or unpleasant ways. The effect of the meeting of two minds is evident to even the most casual observer. Every effect must have a cause. What could be more reasonable than to suspect that the cause of the change in mental attitude between minds that have just come into close contact is nothing more than the disturbance of the electrons or units of each mind in the process of reorganization in the new field created by the contact. For purpose of establishing this lesson on a sound basis, we have gone a long way toward success by admitting that the meeting or close contact of two minds causes in each of them a certain effect or state of mind quite different from that which existed immediately before the contact. While it is desirable, it is not essential to know what is the cause of this reaction of mind upon mind. That the reaction takes place, at any rate, is a known fact that gives us a starting point from which we can show what is meant by the term mastermind. A mastermind can be created through the union or fusion, in a spirit of perfect harmony, of two or more minds. From this harmonious fusion, the chemistry of mind creates a third mind that can be appropriated and used by one or all individual minds. This master mind will remain available as long as the friendly and harmonious alliance between individual minds exists. It will disintegrate, and all evidence of its previous existence will disappear the moment the friendly alliance is broken. This principle of the chemistry of the mind is the basis and cause of virtually all so-called soulmate and eternal triangle cases, many of which unfortunately find their way into the divorce courts and meet with popular ridicule from ignorant and uncultured people who fabricate vulgarity and scandal from one of the greatest laws of nature. The entire civilized world knows that the first 2 or 3 years of association after marriage are often marked by much disagreement of a more or less petty nature. These are the adjustment years. If the marriage survives them, it is more than likely to become a permanent alliance. These facts no experienced married person will deny. Once again, we see the effect without understanding the cause. Although there are other contributing causes, however, in general, the lack of harmony during these early years of marriage is due to the slowness of the chemistry of the minds to merge harmoniously. Put differently, the electrons or units of the energy called mind are often neither extremely friendly nor antagonistic at first contact, but through constant association, they gradually adjust into harmony, except in rare cases where association has the opposite effect of eventually leading to open hostility between these units. It is a well-known fact that after a man and a woman have lived together for 10 or 15 years, they become practically indispensable to each other, even if there is not the slightest evidence of the state of mind called love. Moreover, this sexual association and relationship not only develops a natural affinity between the two minds, but also causes the two people to assume a similar facial expression and closely resemble each other in many other marked ways. Any competent analyst of human nature can easily go into a crowd of strangers and pick out the wife after being introduced to the husband. The expression of eyes, outline of faces, and tone of voices of people who have long been associated in marriage become similar to a marked degree. The effect of the chemistry of the human mind is so pronounced that any experienced public speaker can quickly interpret how his statements are accepted by his audience. Antagonism in the mind of one person in an audience of 1,000 can be readily detected by the speaker, who has learned to feel and record the effects of antagonism. Moreover, the public speaker can make these interpretations without observing or being influenced in any way by the expression on the faces of his interlocutors. Because of this fact, an audience can make a speaker soar to great heights of oratory or deride him to failure without making a sound or denoting a single expression of satisfaction or dissatisfaction through facial features. All master salesmen know the moment when the psychological moment of closing has arrived, not from what the prospective buyer says, but from the effect of the chemistry of his mind as interpreted or heard by the salesman. Words often belie the intentions of those who speak them, but proper interpretation of the chemistry of the mind leaves no escape from that possibility. Every skillful salesman knows that the majority of buyers have a habit of affecting a negative attitude almost to the climax of the sale. Every skilled lawyer has developed a sixth sense that enables him to feel his way through the most skillfully selected words of the intelligent witness who is lying, and correctly interpret what is in the witness's mind through the chemistry of the mind. Many lawyers have developed this ability without knowing its true source. They possess the technique without the scientific understanding on which it is based. Many salespeople have done the same thing. A person endowed with the art of knowing correctly the chemistry of other people's minds can, figuratively speaking, enter through the front door of the mansion of a given mind and pleasantly explore the entire building, noting all its details, coming out again with a complete picture of the building's interior, without the building owner knowing that he or she has hosted a visitor. It will be observed in the lesson, Accurate Thinking, that this principle can be put to very practical use, referring to the principle of the chemistry of mind. The principle is mentioned only as an approach to the main principles of this lesson. Enough has already been said to introduce the principle of the chemistry of the mind and to show, with the help of the student's daily experience and casual observations, that the moment two minds are within a short distance of each other, a remarkable mental change takes place in both, which is sometimes recorded in the nature of friendliness. Each mind has what might be called an electric field. The nature of this field varies, depending on the state of mind of the individual mind that sustains it, and the nature of the chemistry of the mind that creates the field. This author believes that the normal or natural condition of the chemistry of each individual mind is the result of its physical heredity, plus the nature of the thoughts that have dominated that mind, that each mind is constantly changing to the extent that the individual's philosophy and general habits of thought change the chemistry of his mind. The author believes these principles to be true, that any individual can voluntarily change the chemistry of his or her mind so as to attract or repel everyone with whom he or she comes in contact is a fact known. Put another way, any person can assume a mental attitude that will either attract and please others or repel and antagonize them, and this without the help of words or facial expression or other forms of bodily movement or demeanor. Return now to the definition of mastermind, a mind that grows from the fusion and coordination of two or more minds, in a spirit of perfect harmony, and you will grasp the full meaning of the word harmony as it is used here. Two minds do not merge, nor can they be coordinated unless the element of perfect harmony is present, in which lies the secret of the success or failure of virtually all business and social partnerships. Every sales manager and every military commander and every leader in any other sphere of life understands the need for an esprit de corps, a spirit of common understanding and cooperation in achieving success. This mass spirit of harmony of purpose is achieved through discipline, voluntary or forced, of such a nature that individual minds merge into a mastermind, meaning that the chemistry of individual minds is modified in such a way that these minds merge and function as one. The methods by which this fusion process takes place are as numerous as the individuals engaged in the various forms of leadership. Each leader has his or her own method of coordinating the minds of followers. One uses force, another uses persuasion. One will play on fear of sanctions, while another will play on rewards, in order to reduce the individual minds of a given group of people so that they can be merged into a mass mind. The student will not have to look deeply into the history of statism, politics, business, or finance to discover the technique employed by leaders in these fields in the process of fusing the minds of individuals into a mass mind. The true great leaders of the world, however, were provided by nature with a combination of favorable mental chemistry as the nucleus of attraction to other minds. Napoleon was a remarkable example of a man who possessed a magnetic type of mind that had a very definite tendency to attract all minds with which he came in contact. Soldiers followed Napoleon to certain death without batting an eyelid because of the compelling or attractive nature of his personality, and this personality was neither more nor less than the chemistry of his mind. No group of minds can merge into a mastermind if one of the individuals in that group possesses one of these extremely negative and repulsive minds. Negative and positive minds will not merge in the sense described here of a mastermind. Lack of knowledge of this fact has led to the defeat of many otherwise capable leaders. Any skillful leader who understands this principle of the chemistry of mind can temporarily fuse the minds of virtually any group of people so that it represents a mass mind, but the composition disintegrates almost the very moment the leader's presence is removed from the group. Life insurance sales organizations and other most successful sales forces meet once a week or more often for the purpose of what? For the purpose of merging individual minds into a main mind that for a limited number of days will serve as an astamilo to the individual mind. It may be, and is usually true, that the leaders of these groups do not understand what actually takes place in these meetings, which are usually called pep meetings. The routine of these meetings is usually devoted to speeches by the leader and other group members, and occasionally by someone outside the group, while the minds of the individuals are in contact and recharging each other. A human being's brain can be likened to an electric battery in the sense that it will run out or run down, making its owner feel disheartened, discouraged, and lacking in pep. Who is lucky enough to have never experienced such a feeling? The human brain, when in this depleted condition, must be recharged, and the way this happens is through contact with one or more vital minds. Great leaders understand the need for this recharging process, and moreover they understand how to achieve this. This knowledge is the main characteristic that distinguishes a leader from a follower. Fortunate is the person who understands this principle well enough to keep his or her brain vitalized or recharged by periodically contacting it with a more vital mind. Sexual contact is one of the most effective stimuli through which a mind can be recharged, provided the contact is made intelligently between a man and a woman who have genuine affection for each other. Any other kind of sexual relationship is a devitalizer of the mind. Any competent psychotherapy practitioner can recharge a brain in a matter of minutes. Before moving on from the brief reference made to sexual contact as a means of revitalizing an impoverished mind, it seems appropriate to draw attention to the fact that all great leaders, in whatever walk of life they arose, were and are people of a highly sexed nature. The word sex is not an indecent word. You will find it in every dictionary. There is a growing tendency on the part of most informed physicians and other health professionals to accept the theory that all diseases begin when an individual's brain is in a depleted or devitalized state. Put another way, it is a known fact that a person who has a perfectly vitalized brain is virtually, if not entirely, immune from all kinds of disease. Every intelligent health practitioner, of any school or kind, knows that nature or the mind cures disease in every case in which a cure is given. Medicines, faith, laying on of hands, chiropractic, osteopathy, and all other forms of external stimulants are nothing more than artificial aids to nature, or, to put it correctly, simple methods of setting the chemistry of mind in motion in order to readjust the cells and tissues of the body, revitalize the brain, and make the human machine function normally. The most orthodox practitioner will admit the truth of this statement. What, then, might be the possibilities of future developments in the field of the chemistry of the mind? Through the principles of the harmonious merging of minds, one can enjoy perfect health. With the help of this same principle, one can develop sufficient power to solve the problem of economic pressure that constantly presses on every individual. We can judge the future possibilities of the chemistry of the mind by taking inventory of its past achievements, keeping in mind the fact that these achievements were largely the result of accidental discoveries and random groupings of minds. We are approaching the time when professors in universities will teach the chemistry of the mind, as other subjects are now taught. In the meantime, study and experimentation in relation to this subject opens up prospects of possibilities for the individual student. Chemistry of the mind and economic power. That the chemistry of the mind can be appropriately applied to the day-to-day affairs of the business and economic world is a demonstrable fact. Through the fusion of two or more minds, in a spirit of perfect harmony, the principle of mind chemistry can be made to develop sufficient power to enable individuals whose minds have been so fused to accomplish seemingly superhuman feats. Power is the force by which man achieves success in any endeavor. Power in unlimited quantity can be enjoyed by any group of men, or men and women, who possess the wisdom with which to submerge their own personalities and immediate individual self-interest through the fusion of their minds in a spirit of perfect harmony. Observe with profit the frequency with which the word harmony appears throughout this introduction. There can be no development of a master mind where this element of perfect harmony does not exist. The individual units of the mind will not merge with the individual units of another mind until the two minds have been enhanced and heated, so to speak, with a spirit of perfect harmony of purpose. The moment two minds begin to take divergent paths of interest, the individual units of each mind separate, and the third element, known as the master mind, which grew out of the friendly or harmonious alliance, disintegrates. We now come to the study of some well-known men who have amassed great power, even great fortunes, through the application of the chemistry of mind. We begin our study with three men who are known to be highly successful men in their respective fields of economic, business, and professional endeavor. Their names are Henry Ford, Thomas A. Edison, and Harvey S. Firestone. Of the three, Henry Ford is, by far, the most powerful in reference to economic and financial power. Mr. Ford is the most powerful man currently living on Earth. Many who have studied Mr. Ford consider him to be the most powerful man that, with enough power to surpass the monetary trust of the United States. Mr. Ford raises millions of dollars as easily as a child fills his bucket with sand when playing on the beach. It was said by those in a position to know that Mr. Ford, if he had to, could have sent out the request for money and raised $1 billion and have it available for use within a week. No one who knows Ford's track record doubts this. Those who know him well know that he could do it with no more effort than the average man spends to raise the money with which he pays a month's house rent. He could get this money, if he needed it, through intelligent application of the principles on which this course is based. While Mr. Ford's new automobile was being perfected, in 1927, he is said to have received advance orders with cash payments for more than 375,000 cars. At an estimated price of $600 per car, this would amount to $225 million it received before a single car was delivered. Such is the power of confidence in Ford's abilities. Mr. Edison, as everyone knows, is a philosopher, scientist, and inventor. He is perhaps the keenest student of the Bible on earth. A student of nature's Bible, however, and not of the myriad man-made Bibles. Mr. Edison has such a keen insight into Mother Nature's Bible that he has harnessed and combined for the good of mankind more of nature's laws than any other person presently living or who ever lived. It was he who put together the tip of a needle and a piece of rotating wax so that the vibration of the human voice could be recorded and reproduced through the modern talking machine. And perhaps it will be Edison who will eventually enable man to correctly pick up and interpret the vibrations of thought that are now recorded in the boundless universe of the ether, just as he enabled man to record and reproduce the spoken word. It was Edison who first harnessed lightning and made it serve as light for human use through the help of the electric incandescent light bulb. It was Edison who gave the world the modern moving image. These are just some of his outstanding achievements. These modern miracles that he performed, not by deception under the feigned pretense of superhuman power, but in the full light of science, transcend all so-called miracles described in man-made fiction books. Mr. Firestone is the spirit that moves the great Firestone tire industry in Akron, Ohio. His industrial achievements are so well known wherever automobiles are used that no special comment on them seems necessary. All three of these men began their careers, entrepreneurial and professional, without capital, and with little schooling of the kind usually referred to as education. All three men are now well educated. All three are rich. All three are powerful. Now let us investigate the source of their wealth and power. So far we have been concerned only with the effect. The true philosopher wants to understand the cause of a given effect. It is well known that Mr. Ford, Mr. Edison, and Mr. Firestone are close friends and have been for many years, that in years past they used to go to the woods once a year for the period of rest, meditation, and recuperation. But it is not generally known, it is a serious doubt that these three men themselves know it, that there exists among the three men a bond of harmony that caused their minds to merge into a master mind that is the true source of each man's power. This mass mind, born of the coordination of the individual minds of Ford, Edison, and Firestone, enabled these men to tune in to forces and sources of knowledge with which most men are unfamiliar. If the student doubts the principle or effects described here, remember that more than half of the theory stated here is a known fact. For example, it is known that these three men have great power. It is known that they are rich. It is known that they started with no capital and little education. It is known that they form periodic mental contacts. It is known that they are harmonious and friendly. It is known that their achievements are so outstanding that it is impossible to compare them with those of other men in their respective fields of endeavor. All of these effects are known to virtually every school child in the civilized world, so there can be no controversy regarding the effects. Of one fact connected with the cause of the achievements of Edison, Ford, and Firestone we can be sure, namely that these achievements were in no way based on tricks, deception, the supernatural, or so-called revelations, or any other form of law unnatural. These men do not possess a legerdemain. They work with natural laws, laws which for the most part are well known to all economists and leaders in the field of science, with the possible exception of the law on which the chemistry of the mind is not sufficiently developed to be classified by scientific men in their catalog of known laws. A mastermind can be created by any group of people who will coordinate their minds in a spirit of perfect harmony. The group can consist of any number from 2 and up. The best results seem to be available from the fusion of 6 or 7 minds. It has been suggested that Jesus Christ discovered how to make use of the principle of mind chemistry, and that his seemingly miraculous performance grew out of the power he developed through the fusion of the minds of his 12 disciples. Judas Iscariot broke faith, the master mind immediately disintegrated, and Jesus met the supreme catastrophe of his life. When 2 or more people harmonize their minds and produce the effect known as mastermind, each person makes contact with and gathers knowledge through the subconscious minds of all the other members of the group. This power becomes immediately perceptible, having the effect of stimulating the mind to a higher rate of vibration, and otherwise becomes apparent in the form of a more vivid imagination and the consciousness of what appears to be a sixth sense. It is through this sixth sense that new ideas flash into the mind. These ideas take on the nature and form of the subject that dominates the mind of the individual. If the entire group has come together for the purpose of discussing a given subject, the ideas concerning that subject will flood into the minds of all present, as if an outside influence dictates them. The minds of those participating in the master mind become like magnets, attracting ideas and thought stimuli of the most highly organized and practical nature, from no one knows where. The mind-bending process described here as master mind can be compared to the act of someone who connects many electric batteries to a single transmission line, thus increasing the power flowing on that line. Each battery added increases the power flowing on that line by the amount of power that battery carries. Just so in the case of the fusion of individual minds into a master mind. Each mind, through the principle of mind chemistry, stimulates all the other minds in the group, until the energy of the mind becomes so great that it penetrates and connects with the universal energy known as the ether, which in turn touches every atom in the entire universe. The modern radio apparatus confirms, to a considerable extent, the theory stated here. Powerful transmitting stations must be erected through which the vibration of sound is before it can be picked up by the much higher vibrating energy of the ether and carried in all directions. A master mind made up of many individual minds, so intermingled as to produce a strong vibrating energy, constitutes almost an exact counterpart of the radio transmitting station. Every public speaker has felt the influence of the chemistry of the mind, because it is a well-known fact that as soon as the individual minds of an audience become en rapport, in tune with the vibrational rate of the speaker's mind, with the speaker, there is a noticeable increase in enthusiasm in the speaker's mind, and he often rises to levels of oratory that surprise everyone, including himself. The first 5 to 10 minutes of an average speech are devoted to what is known as warming up. By this is meant the process by which the minds of the speaker and his audience come together in a spirit of perfect harmony. Every speaker knows what happens when this state of perfect harmony fails to materialize on part of his audience. The seemingly supernatural phenomena that occur in spiritualistic meetings are the result of the reaction on each other of the minds in the group. These phenomena seldom begin to manifest under 10 or 20 minutes after the group is formed, for the reason that this is about the time it takes for the minds in the group to become harmonized. Blends of a spiritualistic group probably come from one of two sources, or both. Namely, first, from the vast storehouse of the subconscious mind of some member of the group, or second, from the universal storehouse of the ether, in which every thought vibration is more than likely stored. Neither known natural law nor human reason supports the theory of communication with individuals who have died. It is a known fact that any individual can explore the store of knowledge in the mind of another, through this principle of the chemistry of mind, and it seems reasonable to assume that this power can be extended to include contact with any vibration available in the ether, if any. The theory that all higher and more refined vibrations, such as those arising from thought, are preserved in the ether, derives from the known fact that neither matter nor energy, the two known elements of the universe, can be created or destroyed. It is reasonable to assume that all vibrations that have been intensified enough to be picked up and absorbed by the ether will continue forever. Lower vibrations, which do not merge with the ether or otherwise come into contact with it, are likely to live a natural life and die out. All so-called geniuses have probably earned their reputations because, by sheer chance or otherwise, they formed alliances with other minds that enabled them to ascend the vibrations of their own minds to the point where they could contact the vast temple of knowledge recorded and stored in the ether of the universe. All the great geniuses, as far as this author has been able to gather facts, were highly sexed people. The fact that sexual contact is the greatest known mental stimulant gives color to the theory described here. To further investigate the source of economic power as manifested by the achievements of men in business, let us study the case of the Chicago group known as the Big Six, consisting of William Wrigley, Jr., who owns the chewing gum business that bears his name, and whose individual income is said to be more than $15 million a year. John R. Thompson, who runs the chain of dining halls that bears his name. Mr. Lasker, who owns the Lord and Thomas Advertising Agency. Mr. McCullough, who owns the Parmalee Express Company, the largest transfer business in America. And Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Hertz, who own the Yellow Cab business. A reliable financial reporting firm estimated the annual income of these six men at more than $25 million, $25,000, or an average of more than $4 million per year per man. Analysis of the entire group of six men reveals the fact that none of them had any special educational advantages, that all of them started with no capital or extended credit, that their financial success was due to their individual plans and not to some lucky spin of the wheel of chance. Many years ago, these six men formed a friendly alliance, meeting at set times for the purpose of assisting each other with ideas and suggestions in their various and varied lines of business endeavor. With the exception of Hertz and Ritchie, none of the six men were in any way associated in a legal partnership. These meetings were strictly for the purpose of cooperating on the basis of give and take, of helping each other with ideas and suggestions, and occasionally endorsing notes and other titles to help some member of the group who had encountered an emergency that made such help necessary. Each of the individuals belonging to this group of the Big Six is said to be a millionaire many times over. As a rule, there is nothing worthy of special comment from a man who does nothing but accumulate a few $1,000,000. However, there is something connected with the financial success of this particular group of men that deserves commentary, study, analysis, and even emulation, and that something is the fact that they have learned to coordinate their individual minds by merging them into a spirit of perfect harmony, thus creating a master mind that opens, to each individual in the group, doors that are closed to most of the human race. The United States Steel Corporation is one of the strongest and most powerful industrial organizations in the world. The idea from which this great industrial giant grew was born in the mind of Elbert H. Gary, a less ordinary small-town lawyer born and raised in a small Illinois town near Chicago. Mr. Gary surrounded himself with a group of men whose minds he was able to fuse into a spirit of perfect harmony, thus creating the master mind, which is the spirit that moves the great United States Steel Corporation. Look wherever you will, wherever you find outstanding success in business, finance, industry, or any profession, you can be sure that behind the success is some individual who has applied the principle of mind chemistry, from which a master mind was created. These extraordinary successes often appear to be the work of one person, but look hard and you can find other individuals whose minds were coordinated with his or her own. Remember that two or more people can operate the principle of mind chemistry in such a way as to create a mastermind. Power, manpower, is organized knowledge, expressed with intelligent efforts. No effort can be said to be organized unless the individuals engaged in the effort coordinate their knowledge and energies in a spirit of perfect harmony. The lack of harmonious coordination of effort is the root cause of virtually every business failure. An interesting experiment was conducted by this author in collaboration with students at a well-known college. Each student was asked to write an essay on how and why Henry Ford got rich. Each student was required to describe, as part of his or her essay, what was believed to be the nature of Ford's real assets, what these assets consisted of in detail. Most students collected financial statements and inventories of Ford's assets, and used them as the basis for their estimates of Ford's wealth. Included in these sources of Ford's wealth were such things as cash in banks, raw and finished materials in storage, real estate and buildings, goodwill, estimated at 10 to 25% of the value of tangible assets. One student from the whole group of several hundred replied as follows: Henry Ford's assets consist primarily of two elements, namely, 1. The working capital and raw and finished materials. 2. The knowledge, gained by experience, of Henry Ford himself, and the cooperation of a well-trained organization that understands how to apply this knowledge to derive the maximum benefit from Ford's point of view. It is impossible to estimate, with anything approaching accuracy, the actual value in dollars and cents of either of these two groups of assets. But it is my opinion that their relative values are: the organized knowledge of the Ford organization, 75% the value of cash and physical assets of all kinds, including raw and finished materials, 25%. This author is of the opinion that this statement was not completed by the young man whose name was signed, without the assistance of one or more very analytical and experienced minds. Undoubtedly, the greatest asset Henry Ford possesses is his own brain. To this would come the brains of his immediate circle of associates, for it was through the coordination of these that the physical assets he controls were accumulated. Destroy every plant the Ford Motor Company owns, every piece of machinery, every atom of raw or finished material, every finished automobile, and every dollar on deposit in any bank, and Ford would still be the most powerful man, economically, on earth. The brains that built the Ford business could duplicate it again in a short time. Capital is always available, in unlimited quantities, for brains like Ford's. Ford is the most powerful man on earth, economically, because he has the most acute and practical conception of the principle of organized knowledge of any man on earth, as far as this author has the means to know. Despite Ford's great power and financial success, it may be that he often erred in the application of the principles through which he accumulated this power. There is no doubt that Ford's methods of coordinating the mind were often crude. Most of the necessities were in the early days of this experience, before he acquired the wisdom of application that would go naturally with the maturity of years. Nor can there be much doubt that Ford's application of the principle of mental chemistry was, at least in the beginning, the result of a chance alliance with other minds, particularly the mind of Edison. It is more than likely that Mr. Ford's remarkable insight into the laws of nature began as a result of his friendly alliance with his wife long before he met Mr. Edison or Mr. Firestone. Many men who do not know the true source of their success were created by his wife through the application of the master-mind principle. Mrs. Ford is an extraordinarily intelligent woman, and this author has reason to believe that it was her mind, mixed with Mr. Ford's, that gave him his first real start toward power. It may be mentioned, without in any way depriving Ford of any honor or glory, that in his early days of experience, he had to fight the powerful enemies of illiteracy and ignorance to a greater extent than did Edison or Firestone, both of whom were endowed by natural inheritance with a very fortunate aptitude for acquiring and applying knowledge. Ford had to hew this talent from the rough and crude rafters of his inherited heritage. In an inconceivably short period of time, Ford has mastered 3 of humanity's most stubborn enemies and turned them into assets that form the very foundation of his success. These enemies are ignorance, illiteracy, and poverty. Any man who can restrain the hand of these 3 wild forces, much less harness them and use them to good purpose, is well worthy of close study by less fortunate individuals. This is an era of industrial power in which we are living. The source of all this power is organized effort. Not only has the management of industrial enterprises effectively organized individual workers, but in many cases, mergers of industries have been carried out in such a way, and to such an end, that these combinations, as in the case of the United States Steel Corporation, for example, have accumulated virtually unlimited power. One cannot glance at a day's news without seeing news of a commercial, industrial, or financial merger that brings together enormous resources under one direction and thus creates great power. One day it is a group of banks. Another day it is a chain of railroads. The next day it is a combination of steel. Facilities, all united for the purpose of developing energy through a highly organized and coordinated effort. Knowledge, general in nature and unorganized, is not power. It is only potential power, the material from which real power can be developed. Any modern library contains an unorganized record of all the valuable knowledge to which the present stage of civilization is heir. But this knowledge is not power because it is not organized. Every form of energy and every species of animal or plant life, in order to survive, must be organized. The oversized animals, whose bones filled nature's bone garden through extinction, left mute but certain proof that non-organization means annihilation. From the electron, the smallest particle of matter, to the largest star in the universe, these and every material thing between these two extremes offer proof positive that one of the first laws of nature is that of organization. Fortunate is the individual who recognizes the importance of this law and undertakes to familiarize himself with the various ways in which this law can be applied with advantage. The astute businessman not only recognized the importance of the law of organized effort, but made this law the warp and woof of his power. Without any knowledge of the principle of the chemistry of mind, or that such a principle exists, many men have accumulated great power simply by organizing the knowledge they possessed. Most everyone who has discovered the principle of the chemistry of mind and developed that principle into a master mind has stumbled upon this knowledge by the smallest of accidents, often not recognizing the true nature of their discovery or not understanding the source of their power. This author is of the opinion that all living people who at this time are consciously making use of the principle of mind chemistry in the development of power through the fusion of minds can be counted on the fingers of his two hands, with, perhaps, a few more fingers. If this estimate is even approximately true, the student will quickly see that there is no danger of the field of mind chemistry practice becoming overcrowded. It is a well-known fact that one of the most difficult tasks any businessman has to perform is to induce those associated with him to coordinate their efforts in a spirit of harmony. To induce continuous cooperation among a group of workers in any enterprise is almost impossible. Only the most effective leaders can accomplish this highly desired goal. But once in a while, such a leader will rise above the horizon in industry, business, or finance, and then the world will hear of a Henry Ford, Thomas A. Edison, John D. Rockefeller, Sr., E. H. Harriman, or James J. Hill. Power and success are practically synonymous. One grows from the other. Therefore, any person who has the knowledge and ability to develop power through the harmonious principle. Coordination of effort among individual minds, or in any other way, can succeed in any reasonable undertaking that is possible to finish successfully. It should not be assumed that a master mind will immediately spring forth, like a mushroom, from every group of minds that claim to coordinate in a spirit of harmony. Harmony, in the true sense of the word, is as rare among groups of people as genuine Christianity among those who proclaim themselves Christians. Harmony is the core around which the state of mind, known as master mind, must be developed. Without this element of harmony, there can be no master mind, a truth that cannot be repeated too often. Woodrow Wilson had in mind the development of a master mind, to be composed of groups of minds representing the civilized nations of the world, in his proposal to establish the League of Nations. Wilson's conception was the most far-reaching humanitarian idea ever created in the mind of man, for it dealt with a principle that embraces sufficient power to establish a true brotherhood of man on earth. the League of Nations, or some similar fusion of international minds in a spirit of harmony, is sure to become a reality. The time in which such unity of minds will take place will be measured in large part by the time it will take the great universities and non-sectarian institutions of learning to supplant ignorance and superstition with understanding and wisdom. This time is rapidly approaching. The psychology of the revival meeting. The old religious orgy known as revival provides a favorable opportunity to study the principle of the chemistry of mind known as mastermind. It will be observed that music plays no small part in bringing the harmony essential for the merging of a group of minds in an awakening meeting. Without music, the awakening meeting would be a mundane affair. During awakening services, the meeting leader has no difficulty in creating harmony in the minds of his devotees. But it is a well-known fact that this state of harmony does not last longer than the presence of the leader, after which the mastermind he has temporarily created disintegrates. By arousing the emotional nature of his followers, the revivalist has no difficulty under the proper setting and with the embellishment of the right kind of music in creating a master mind that becomes evident to all who come in contact with it. The air itself is charged with the entire chemistry of all minds present. The revivalist calls this energy the Spirit of the Lord. This author, through experiments conducted with a group of scientific and lay researchers who were unaware of the nature of the experiment, created the same positive mood and atmosphere without calling it the Spirit of the Lord. On many occasions, this author has witnessed the creation of those engaged in the business of sales without calling it the Spirit of the Lord. The author helped lead a sales school for Harrison Parker, founder of the Chicago Cooperative Society, and, through the use of the same principle of mental chemistry that the revivalist calls the Spirit of the Lord, so transformed the nature of a group of 3,000 men and women, all with no previous sales experience, that they sold more than $10 million worth of stocks in less than 9 months and earned more than $1 million for themselves. It was found that the average person joining this school would reach the zenith of his or her selling power within a week, after which it was necessary to revitalize the individual's brain through a group sales meeting. These sales meetings were conducted in much the same order as modern religionists' revival meetings, with much the same props, including music and high-powered speakers, exhorting the salesman in much the same way as the modern religious revivalist does. Call it religion, psychology, chemistry of mind, or whatever you want. They are all based on the same principle. But there is nothing more certain than the fact that wherever a group of minds is brought into contact, in a spirit of perfect harmony, every mind in the group is immediately integrated and strengthened by a remarkable energy called the master mind. For all this, writer professes to know, this unexplored energy may be the Spirit of the Lord, but it works just as favorably when called by any other name. The human brain and nervous system constitute an intricate piece of machinery that few, if any, understand. When properly controlled and directed, this machinery can be made to perform wonders of accomplishment, and if it is not controlled, it performs wonders of a fantastic and phantasmic nature, as can be seen by examining the inmates of any asylum. The human brain has a direct connection with a continuous influx of energy from which man derives his power to think. The brain receives this energy, mixes it with the energy created by the food taken into the body, and distributes it to every portion of the body through the help of the blood and nervous system. It thus becomes what we call life. From what source this external energy comes, no one seems to know. All we know is that we must have it or die. It seems reasonable to assume that this energy is nothing more than what we call ether, and that it flows into the body along with the oxygen in the air when we breathe. Every normal human body has a first-class chemical laboratory and a stock of sufficient chemicals to carry on the business of properly breaking down, assimilating and mixing and compounding the food we take into the body, preparatory to distributing it wherever it is needed as a bodybuilder. Extensive tests have been done, both with humans and animals, to prove that the energy known as the mind plays an important part in this chemical operation of composing and transforming food into the substances needed to build and maintain the body in repair. Worry, excitement, or fear are known to interfere with the digestive process and, in extreme cases, block it altogether, causing illness or death. It is obvious, then, that the mind enters into the chemistry of food digestion and distribution. Many eminent authorities believe, although it has never been scientifically proven, that the energy known as mind or thought can be contaminated by negative or unsocial units, to such an extent that the entire nervous system is put out of order. Digestion is disturbed, and various forms of illness occur. Financial difficulties and unrequited love affairs top the list of causes of these mental disorders. Such a negative environment as exists where some family member is constantly nagging will interfere with the chemistry of the mind to such an extent that the individual will lose ambition and gradually sink into oblivion. It is because of this fact that the old saying that a man's wife can make or break him is literally true. In a later lesson, an entire chapter on this subject is addressed to men's wives. Any high school student knows that certain food combinations, if taken in the stomach, cause indigestion, violent pain, and even death. Good health depends, at least in part, on a combination of food is not enough to ensure good health. There must be harmony, too, among the units of energy known as the mind. Harmony seems to be one of the laws of nature, without which to be nothing like organized energy or life in any form. The health of the body and mind is literally built around, by and on, the principle of harmony. The energy known as life begins to disintegrate, and death approaches when the organs of the body stop working in harmony. The moment harmony ceases at the source of any form of organized energy, power, the units of that energy are thrown into a chaotic state of disorder, and power is rendered neutral or passive. Harmony is also the core around which the principle of mind chemistry known as master mind develops power. Destroy its harmony, and you destroy the power that grows from the coordinated effort of a group of individual minds. This truth was affirmed, restated, and presented in every way the author could devise, with endless repetition, because unless the student grasps this principle and learns to apply it, this lesson is useless. Success in life, whatever one might call success, is largely a matter of adapting to the environment so that there is harmony between the individual and his environment. A king's palace becomes like a peasant's hovel if harmony does not abound within its walls. Inversely, a peasant's hut may give more happiness than a rich man's mansion if harmony is found in the former and not in the latter. Without perfect harmony, the science of astronomy would be as useless as the bones of a saint, because the stars and planets would collide with each other, and everything would be in a state of chaos and disorder. Without the law of harmony, an acorn could grow into a heterogeneous tree composed of oak, poplar, maple, and whatever else. Without the law of harmony, the blood could deposit growing food, which could easily be mistaken by the superstitious to signify man's relationship with a certain imaginary lord with horns, often referred to by the more primitive type. Without the law of harmony, there can be no organization of knowledge. For what, it may be asked, is organized knowledge, if not the harmony of facts and truths and natural laws? The moment discord begins to creep in through the front door, harmony goes out the back door, so to speak, whether it is a business partnership or the orderly movement of the planets in the sky. If the student has the impression that the author places undue emphasis on the importance of harmony, remember that lack of harmony is the first, and often the last and only, cause of failure. There can be no poetry or music or oratory worth mentioning without the presence of harmony. Good architecture is largely a matter of harmony. Without harmony, a house is nothing but a mass of building material, more or less a monstrosity. Sound business management plants the very sinews of its existence in harmony. Every well-dressed man or woman is a living image and a moving example of harmony. With all these working illustrations of the important, how could an intelligent person leave harmony out of his defined purpose in life? He might as well not have a definite purpose as omit harmony as the main stone of his foundation. The human body is a complex organization of organs, glands, blood vessels, nerves, brain cells, muscles, etc. The mental energy that stimulates action and coordinates the efforts of the component parts of the body is also a plurality of ever-changing and variable energies. From birth to death, there is a continuous struggle, which often takes on the nature of open combat, between the forces of the mind. For example, the lifelong struggle between the motivating forces and desires of the human mind, which takes place between the impulses of right and wrong, is well known to all. Every human being possesses at least 2 distinct mental powers or personalities, and as many as 6 distinct personalities have been discovered in one person. One of man's most delicate tasks is to harmonize these mental powers so that they can be organized and directed toward the orderly achievement of a given goal. Without this element of harmony, no individual can become an accurate thinker. It is no wonder that leaders in business and industrial enterprises, as well as those in politics and other fields of endeavor, find it so difficult to organize groups of people so that they function in achieving a given goal without friction. Each individual human being possesses forces within him or herself that are difficult to harmonize, even when placed in the environment most conducive to harmony. If the chemistry of the individual's mind is such that the units of his mind cannot be easily harmonized, think how much more difficult it must be to harmonize a group of minds so that they function as one, in an orderly manner, through what is known as the master mind. The leader who successfully develops and directs the energies of a mastermind must possess tact, patience, persistence, self-confidence, intimate knowledge of the chemistry of the mind, and the ability to adapt, in a state of perfect balance and harmony, to rapidly changing circumstances without showing the slightest sign of annoyance. How many can live up to this requirement? The successful leader must possess the ability to change the color of his mind, like a chameleon, to adapt to every circumstance that arises in relation to the object of his leadership. In addition, he must possess the ability to switch from one state of mind to another without showing the slightest sign of anger or lack of self-control. The successful leader must understand the 15 laws of success and be able to put into practice any combination of these 15 laws when the occasion calls for it. Without this ability, no leader can be powerful, and without power, no tenant can last long. The meaning of education. There has long been a general misunderstanding of the meaning of the word educate. Dictionaries have not helped to eliminate this misunderstanding because they have defined the word educate as an act of imparting knowledge. The word educate has its roots in the Latin word educo, which means to develop from inside, educe, pull out, grow through the law of use. Nature hates idleness in all its forms. It gives continuous life only to those elements that are in use. Tie up an arm or any other part of the body, removing it from use, and the idle part will soon atrophy and become lifeless. Reverse the order. Give an arm more than normal use, like that of the blacksmith who wields a heavy hammer all day, and that arm, developed from within, will become strong. Power grows from organized knowledge, but mind you, it grows through application and use. A man can become a walking encyclopedia of knowledge without possessing any power of value. This knowledge becomes power only to the extent that it is organized, classified, and put into action. Some of the most educated men the world has known possessed far less general knowledge than some who have been known as madmen, the difference between the two being that the former put into use the knowledge they possessed, while the latter made no such application. An educated person is one who now knows how to acquire everything he needs to achieve his main purpose in life, without violating the rights of his fellow human beings. It might come as a surprise to many so-called men of learning to know that they are not at all qualified as men of education. It might also come as a great surprise to many who believe they suffer from a lack of learning to know that they are well educated. The successful lawyer is not necessarily the one who memorizes the most principles of law. On the contrary, the successful lawyer is the one who knows where to find a principle of law, plus a variety of opinions supporting that principle that fit the immediate needs of a given case. In other words, the successful lawyer is the one who knows where to find the law he wants when he needs it. This principle applies with equal force to the affairs of industry and business. Henry Ford had but an elementary education, yet he is one of the most educated men in the world because he has acquired the ability to combine natural and economic laws, not to mention the minds of men, so that he has the power to obtain anything of a material nature that he wants. A few years ago, during the World War, Mr. Ford filed a lawsuit against the Chicago Tribune, accusing that newspaper of publishing defamatory statements against him, one of which was the statement that Ford was an ignoramus, an ignorant pacifist, etc. When the case came to court, the Tribune's lawyers undertook to prove, through Ford himself, that their statement was true, that he was ignorant, and with this goal in view they catechized and questioned him on all subjects. One of the questions they asked was, "How many soldiers did the British send to subdue the rebellion in the colonies in 1776? With a dry smile on his face, Ford nonchalantly replied, "I don't know how many, but I've heard that." Was much more than ever back. Big laughs from the court, the jury, the spectators, and even the frustrated lawyer who had asked the question. This line of questioning continued for an hour or more, with Ford keeping perfectly calm in the meantime. Eventually, however, he had allowed the smart aleck lawyers to play with him until he was tired, and in response to a particularly obnoxious and offensive question, Ford straightened up, pointed his finger at the questioning lawyer, and answered, "If I really wanted to answer the silly question you have just asked, or any other you have asked, let me remind you that I have a row of electric buttons hanging over my desk, and by putting my finger on the right button, I could call men who could give me the correct answer to all the questions you have asked, and many that you do not have the intelligence to ask or answer. Now, will you kindly tell me why I should bother to fill my mind with a lot of useless details to answer every stupid question someone may ask, when I have capable men around me who can give me all the facts I want when I call them?" This response is quoted from memory, but it basically refers to Ford's response. There was silence in the courtroom. The questioning lawyer's jaw dropped. His eyes opened widely. The judge leaned forward from the bench and looked in Mr. Ford's direction. Many jurors woke up and looked around as if they had heard an explosion, which indeed they had. A prominent churchman who was present in the courtroom at the time said later that the scene reminded him of the one that must have existed when Jesus Christ was on trial before Pontius Pilate, immediately after giving his famous answer to Pilate's question, "What is truth?" In the jargon of the time, Ford's answer knocked out the questioner. Up to the time of that response, the lawyer had had a great deal of fun at Ford's expense, cleverly displaying the lawyer's example of general knowledge and comparing it with what he deduced to be Ford's ignorance about many events and subjects. But this answer ruined the lawyer's fun. It also proved once again, to all who had the intelligence to accept the proof, that true education means the development of the mind, not just the collection and classification of knowledge. Ford could not, in all likelihood, have named the capitals of all the states of the United States, but he could and in fact had raised the capital with which to spin many wheels within each state of the Union. Education, let us not forget, is about the power to get whatever one needs when one needs it, without infringing on the rights of one's fellow man. Ford fits well into this definition, and for the reason the author has tried to make clear here, referring to the philosophy. There are many men of culture who could easily ensnare Ford theoretically with a maze of questions that he personally could not answer. But Ford could turn around and lead a battle in industry or finance that would exterminate those same men with all their knowledge and all their wisdom. Ford could not go to his chemical laboratory and separate water into its component atoms of hydrogen and oxygen, and then recombine these atoms in their previous order. But he knows how to surround himself with chemists who can do this for him if he wants to. The man who can intelligently use knowledge possessed by another is as much or more a man of education as the person who simply has the knowledge but does not know what to do with it. The president of a well-known college inherited a large tract of very poor land. This land had no timber of commercial value, no minerals or other appurtenances of value. Therefore, it was nothing but a source of expense to him because he had to pay taxes on it. The state built a highway through the land. An ignorant man who was driving his automobile on this road observed that this poor land was on top of a mountain that commanded a wonderful view for many miles in all directions. He, the ignoramus, also observed that the land was covered with a growth of small pines and other saplings. He bought 50 acres of land for $10 an acre. Near the public road, he built a single log house to which he added a large dining room. Near the house, he put a gasoline filling station. He built a dozen one-room log houses along the road, which he rented to tourists at $3 a night each. The dining room, gas station, and log houses brought him a net income of $15,000 the first year. The following year, he extended his plan by adding 50 more log houses, of 3 houses to people in a nearby town, at a rent of $150 each for the season. The building material cost him nothing because it grew on his land in abundance, the same land that the college president believed to be worthless. Moreover, the unique and unusual appearance of the log bungalows served as publicity for the plan, whereas many would have considered it a calamity if they were forced to build with such crude materials. Less than 5 miles from the location of these log houses, this same man purchased an old 150-acre farm for $25 an acre, a price the seller believed to be extremely high. By building a 100-foot-long dam, the purchaser of this old farm turned a stream of water into a lake that covered 15 acres of the land, filled the lake with fish, then sold the farm in buildable lots to people who wanted places to vacation around the lake. The total profit realized from this simple transaction was more than $25,000, and the time required for its consummation was 1 summer. Yet this man of vision and imagination was not educated in the orthodox sense of the word. Let us keep in mind that it is through these simple illustrations of the use of organized knowledge that one can become educated and powerful. Speaking about the transaction described here, the college president who sold the 50 acres of worthless land for $500 said, "Think about it. That man whom most of us might call ignorant mixed his ignorance with 50 acres of worthless land and made the combination yield more annually than I earn with 5 years of applying so-called education." There is an opportunity, if not dozens, in every state in America to make use of the idea described here. From now on, make sure you study the layout of all the land you see that is similar to that described in this lesson, and you may find a suitable place to develop such a money-making venture. The idea is particularly adaptable in locations where there are few beaches for bathing, since people naturally like such amenities. The automobile has had a large system of public highways built all over the United States. Practically on each of these highways, there is a suitable place for a cabin city for tourists that can be turned into a regular money-making mint by man, with the imagination and self-confidence to do so. There are money-making opportunities all around you. This course is designed to help you see these opportunities and to inform you how to make the most of them after you discover them. Who can profit most from the philosophy of the law of success? Railroad officials who want a better spirit of cooperation between their drivers and the public they serve. salaried people who wish to increase their earning capacity and better market their services, sellers who wish to become masters in their chosen field. The Law of Success philosophy covers all known sales laws and includes many features not included in any other course. Industrial plant managers who understand the value of greater harmony among their employees. Railroad employees who wish to set efficiency records that will lead to positions of greater responsibility with higher pay. Merchants who wish to expand their business by adding new customers. The Law of Success philosophy will help any merchant increase his business by teaching him how to make a walking advertisement of every customer who enters his store. Automobile agents who wish to increase the selling power of their salespeople. Much of the Law of Success course was developed from the life work and experience of the greatest living car salesman, and is therefore of unusual help to the sales director who directs the efforts of car salesmen. Life insurance agents wishing to add new policyholders and increase the insurance of current policyholders. One life insurance salesman in Ohio sold a $50,000 policy to one of Central Steel Company's officials as a result of just one reading of the lecture on profiting from failures. This same salesman became one of the stars on the staff of the New York Life Insurance Company as a result of his training in the 15 Laws of Success. School teachers who wish to advance to the top in their current occupation, or who are seeking an opportunity to enter the more lucrative field of business as a life's work. Students, both college and high school, who are undecided about which field of activity they wish to enter as a life's work. The Law of Success course includes a comprehensive personal analysis service that helps the philosophy student determine the job for which he or she is best suited. Bankers who wish to extend their business through better and more courteous methods of serving their customers. Bank clerks who have ambitions to prepare for executive positions in banking or some commercial or industrial field. Physicians and dentists who wish to extend their practice without violating the ethics of their profession with direct advertising. A leading physician said the course The Law of Success is worth $1,000 to any practitioner whose professional ethics prevent direct advertising. Promoters who wish to develop new and novel combinations in business or industry. The principle described in this introductory lesson is said to have made a small fortune for one man who used it as the basis of a real estate promotion. Real estate people who want new ways to promote sales. This introductory lesson contains a description of an entirely new real estate promotion plan that is sure to make fortunes for many who will use it. This plan can be put into operation in virtually any state. Moreover, it can be employed by men who have never promoted a business. Farmers who wish to discover new methods of marketing their products so as to achieve higher net returns, and those who own land suitable for subdivision promotion according to the plan mentioned at the end of this introductory lecture. Thousands of farmers have gold mines in land that is not suitable for cultivation, which could be used for recreational and resort purposes on a highly profitable basis. Stenographers and librarians who are looking for a practical plan to promote themselves into higher and better paid positions. The course, The Law of Success, is said to be the best course ever written on the subject of personal service marketing. Printers who want higher turnover and more efficient production as a result of better cooperation among their employees. Day workers who have ambitions to advance to positions of greater responsibility, in jobs that have more responsibility and consequently offer higher pay. Lawyers who wish to extend their clientele through dignified and ethical methods that will bring them to the attention favorably of more. People in need of legal services. Business executives who wish to expand their current business or who wish to manage their current volume with less expense as a result of greater cooperation among their employees. Laundry owners who wish to expand their business by teaching their drivers to serve more courteously and efficiently. General life insurance agents who want larger and more efficient sales organizations. Chain store operators who want higher volume. of business as a result of more efficient individual sales efforts, married people who are unhappy and therefore unsuccessful due to lack of harmony and cooperation in the home. To all those described in the previous classification, the philosophy of the law of success offers both definitive and fast help. Summary of the introductory lecture. The purpose of this summary is to help the student master the central idea around which the lesson was developed. This idea is represented by the term mastermind, which has been described in detail throughout the lesson. All new ideas, and especially those of an abstract nature, find accommodation in the human mind only after much repetition, a well-known truth that explains the restatement in this summary of the principle known as the mastermind. A mastermind can be developed by a friendly alliance in a spirit of harmony of purpose between two or more minds. This is the appropriate place to explain that from every alliance of minds, whether in a spirit of harmony or not, another mind develops that affects all participants in the alliance. No two or more minds have ever met without creating, from the contact, another mind. But this invisible creation is not always a master mind. There can be, and too often is, developed from the meeting of two or more minds, a negative power that is just the opposite of a master mind. There are some minds which, as has already been mentioned in the course of this lecture, cannot be made to merge in a spirit of harmony. This principle has its comparable analogy in chemistry, reference to which may enable the student to grasp more clearly the principle mentioned here. For example, the chemical formula H20, meaning the combination of two hydrogen atoms with one oxygen atom, turns these two elements into water. A hydrogen atom and an oxygen atom will not produce water. Moreover, it is not possible to make them combine in harmony. There are many known elements that, when combined, immediately turn from harmless into deadly poisonous substances. Said differently, many well-known poisonous elements are neutralized and rendered harmless when combined with certain other elements. Just as the combination of certain elements changes their entire nature, the combination of certain minds changes the nature of those minds, producing either a certain degree of what has been called a master mind, or its opposite, which is highly destructive. Every man who has found his mother-in-law incompatible has experienced the negative application of the principle known as the master mind. For some reason still unknown to investigators in the field of mental behavior, most mothers-in-law seem to influence their daughters' husbands in a highly negative way. The meeting of their minds with those of their sons-in-law creates a highly antagonistic influence instead of a master mind. This fact is too well known as truth to make extensive commentary necessary. Some minds will not be harmonized and cannot be merged into a master mind, a fact that all leaders of men will do well to remember. It is the leader's responsibility to group his men so that those placed at the most strategic points in his organization are made up of individuals whose minds can and will be fused in a spirit of friendship and harmony. The ability to group men together is the main outstanding quality of leadership. In Lesson 2 of this course, the student will discover that this ability was the main source of both the power and fortune accumulated by the late Andrew Carnegie. Knowing nothing about steel technology and business, Carnegie combined and grouped the men of which his mater mind was composed in such a way as to build the most successful steel industry known to the world during his lifetime. Henry Ford's gigantic success can be traced to the successful application of this same principle. With all the self-confidence a man can have, Ford, however, did not depend on himself for the knowledge necessary for the successful development of his industries. Like Carnegie, he surrounded himself with men who provided the knowledge that he himself did not and could not have. In addition, Ford chose men who could harmonize in the group effort, and they did. The most effective alliances, which led to the creation of the principle known as mastermind, were those developed by the fusion of the minds of men and women. The reason for this is the fact that male and female minds merge more easily in harmony than male minds. In addition, the added stimulus of sexual contact often enters into the development of a mastermind between a man and a woman. It is a well-known fact that the male of the species is more passionate and more alert for the chase, whether the target or the object of the chase, when inspired and urged on by a female. This human trait begins to manifest in the male at the age of puberty and continues throughout life. The first evidence of it can be observed in athletics, where boys play in front of an audience composed of females. Take the women out of the audience and the game known as soccer will soon become a very tame affair. A boy throws himself into a soccer game with almost superhuman effort when he knows that the girl of his choice is watching him from the stands. And that same guy will throw himself into the game of accumulating money with the same enthusiasm when he is inspired and prompted by the woman of his choice, especially if that woman knows how to stimulate his mind with her own, through the law of the mastermind. On the other hand, that same woman can, through a negative application of the mastermind law, nagging, jealousy, selfishness, greed, vanity, drag this man to certain defeat. The late Elbert Hubbard understood the principle described here so well that, when he discovered that the incompatibility between himself and his first wife was dragging him toward certain defeat, he defied public opinion by divorcing her and marrying the woman who is said to have been the main source of his inspiration. Not every man would have had the courage to challenge public opinion, as Hubbard did, but who is wise enough to say that his action was not in everyone's interest? A man's main activity in life is to be successful. The road to success can be, and generally is, hindered by many influences that must be removed before reaching the goal. One of the most damaging of these obstacles is that of the unfortunate alliance with minds that do not harmonize. In such cases, the alliance must be broken, or the end will surely be defeat and failure. The man who has mastered the 6 basic fears, one of which is the fear of criticism, will have no hesitation in taking what may seem to the most convention-bound type of mind a drastic action when he finds himself circumscribed and bound by antagonistic alliances, no matter what their nature or with whom they are. It is 1,000,000 times better to meet and face criticism than to be dragged into failure and oblivion because of alliances that are not harmonious, whether commercial or social. To be perfectly frank, the author is here justifying divorce when the conditions surrounding the marriage are such that harmony cannot prevail. By this, he is not implying that the lack of harmony cannot be removed by methods other than divorce, for there are cases where the cause of antagonism can be removed and harmony established without taking the extreme step of divorce. While it is true that some minds do not merge in a spirit of harmony and cannot be forced or induced to do so, due to the chemical nature of the individual's brain, do not be too ready to blame the other side of your alliance for all the responsibility for the lack of harmony. Remember, the problem may be in your own brain. Remember also that a mind that cannot and will not harmonize with one or more people can harmonize perfectly with other types of minds. The discovery of this truth has led to radical changes in the methods of hiring men. It is no longer customary to dismiss a man because he is not suitable for the position for which he was originally hired. The discriminating leader strives to place such a man in some other position where, it has been shown more than once, misfits can become men of value. The student of this course should be sure that the principle described as master mind has been thoroughly understood before proceeding to the remaining lectures in the course. The reason for this is the fact that virtually the entire course is closely associated with this law of mind functioning. If you are not sure that you understand this law, communicate with the course author and secure further explanation by asking the questions you want on the points in relation to which you believe you need more information. You cannot spend too much time in serious thought and contemplation in relation to the law of the master mind, because when you have mastered this law and learn to apply it, new worlds of opportunity will open up to you. This introductory lesson, while not really intended as a separate lesson in the Law of Success course, contains enough data to enable the student who has a sales aptitude to become a master salesman. Any sales organization can make effective use of the mastermind law by grouping salespeople into groups of 2 or more who will ally in a spirit of friendly cooperation and apply this law as suggested in this lesson. An agent for a well-known automobile brand, which employs 12 salesmen, grouped his organization into 6 groups of 2 men each, with the aim of applying the mastermind law, with the result that all the salesmen set new sales records. This same organization has created what it calls the one-a-week club, which means that each man belonging to the club has averaged 1 car sale per week since the club has been organized. The results of this effort were surprising for everyone. Each man belonging to the club has received a list of 100 potential car buyers. Each salesman sends 1 postcard a week to each of his 100 potential buyers and personally calls at least 10 of them each day. Each personal card is limited to a description of only one advantage of the car the seller is selling and asks for a personal interview. Interviews increased rapidly, as did sales. The agent who employs these salespeople has offered an extra cash bonus to each salesperson who earns the right to be a member of the one-a-week club by averaging 1 car per week. The plan has given new vitality to the entire organization. In addition, the results of the plan can be seen in each vendor's weekly sales record. Such a plan could be adopted very effectively by life insurance agencies. Any enterprising general agent could easily double or even triple the volume of his or her business with the same number of salespeople through the use of this plan. Practically no changes would need to be made in the method of using the plan. The club could be called a policy-a-week club, meaning that each member would commit to selling at least 1 policy of an agreed minimum amount each week. The student in this course who has learned the second lesson and understands how to apply the fundamentals of that lesson, a defined main objective, will be able to make much more effective use of the plan described here. It is not suggested or intended that any student commit to applying the principles of this lesson, which is only an introductory lesson, until he or she has learned at least the next 5 lessons of the Law of Success course. The main purpose of this introductory lesson is to state some of the principles on which the course is based. These principles are more accurately described, and the student is taught very precisely how to apply them in the individual lessons of the course. The car sales organization referred to in this summary meets for lunch once a week. An hour and a half is devoted to lunch and discussion of ways and means of applying the principles of this course. This gives each man an opportunity to benefit from the ideas of all the other members of the organization. 2 tables are set for lunch. At one table are seated all those who have earned the right to be members of the one-week club. At the other table, which is served with tinware instead of china, are seated all those who have not earned the right to be members of the club. These, needless to say, become the object of considerable good-natured rebuke from the more fortunate members seated at the other table. An almost infinite variety of adaptations of this plan can be made, both in the field of automobile sales and in other sales fields. The justification for its use is that it pays. It pays not only the leader or manager of the organization, but also every member of the sales force. This plan has been briefly described for the purpose of: show the student in this course how to make practical application of the principles outlined in this course. The final proof of any theory or rule or principle is that it will actually work. The law of the mastermind has been proven to be valid because IT works. If you have understood this law, you are now ready to proceed to Lesson 2, in which you will be further along. Your 6 most dangerous enemies. A visit after the lecture with the author. The 6 specters are labeled: fear of poverty, fear of death, fear of illness, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, fear of criticism. Every person on earth is afraid of something. Most fears are inherited. In this essay, you will study the 6 basic fears that do the most damage. Your fears must be mastered before you can win in any worthwhile endeavor in life. Find out how many of the 6 fears bother you, but more important than that, also determine how to conquer these fears. In this image, you have the opportunity to study the 6 worst enemies. These enemies are not beautiful. The artist who drew this picture did not paint the 6 characters as they really are. If he had done so, no one would have believed him. As you read about these bad characters, analyze yourself and find out which one of them hurts you the most. The purpose of this essay is to help readers of this course ward off these mortal enemies. Observe that the 6 characters are behind you, where you cannot comfortably see them. Every human being on this earth is bound to some extent by one or more of these invisible fears. The first step in killing these enemies is to find out where and how you acquired them. They have taken possession of you through 2 forms of heredity. One is known as physical heredity, to which Darwin devoted so many studies. The other is known as social heredity, through which the fears, superstitions, and beliefs of men who lived through the Dark Ages have been transmitted from one generation to the next. Let us study first the part that physical heredity played in the creation of these 6 basic fears. Starting from the beginning, we find that nature has been a cruel builder. From the lowest life form to the highest, nature has allowed the strongest to prey on weaker animal life forms. Fish prey on worms and insects, eating them bodily. Birds prey on fish. Higher forms of animal life prey on birds and on each other, down to man. And man preys on all other lower forms of animal life and man. The entire history of evolution is an unbroken chain of evidence of cruelty and destruction of the weaker by the stronger. No wonder the weaker animal life forms have learned to fear the stronger. Fear consciousness arises in every living animal. So much for the instinct of fear that came to us through physical inheritance. Now let us examine social inheritance and find out what role it has played in our formation. The term social inheritance refers to everything we are taught, everything we learn or gather from observation and experience with other living things. Put aside all prejudices and fixed opinions you may have formed, at least temporarily, and you can know the truth about your 6 worst enemies, starting with the fear of poverty. It takes courage to tell the truth about the history of this enemy of humanity, and even more courage to listen to the truth after it has been told. The fear of poverty stems from man's habit of economically preying on his fellow man. Animals that have the instinct, but not the power to think, prey on each other physically. Man, with his superior sense of intuition and his most powerful weapon of thinking, does not eat his fellow man bodily. He takes more pleasure in eating him financially. Man is such a great offender in this regard that almost every state and nation has been forced to pass laws, dozens of laws, to protect the weak from the strong. Every blue law is indisputable proof of man's nature to prey economically on his weaker brother. The second of the 6 fundamental fears with which man is bound is the fear of old age. This fear stems from 2 main causes. First, the thought that old age may bring with it poverty. Second, from false and cruel sectarian teachings that were so well mixed with fire and brimstone that every human being learned to fear old age because it meant the approach of another, and perhaps a more horrible world than this one. The third of the 6 basic fears is the fear of bad health. This fear arises from both physical and social inheritance. From birth until death, there is an eternal war within each physical body, war between groups of cells. One group is known as the friendly builders of the body, and the other as the destroyers, or disease germs. The seed of fear was born in the physical body, at first as a result of nature's cruel plan to allow the stronger cellular life forms to prey on the weaker ones. Social heredity played its part through lack of cleanliness and knowledge of hygiene. also through the law of suggestion, skillfully manipulated by those who took advantage of disease. The fourth of the 6 basic fears is fear of losing someone's love. This fear fills asylums with jealous lunatics because jealousy is nothing more than a form of insanity. It also fills divorce courts and causes murder and other forms of cruel punishment. It is a legacy, passed down through social inheritance, from the Stone Age when man preyed on his fellow man by stealing his mate by physical force. The method, but not the practice, has now changed to some extent. Instead of physical force, man now steals his fellow man's mate with beautiful colored ribbons and fast cars and smuggled whiskey and glittering rocks and stately mansions. The man is improving. He now draws where he once led. The fifth of the 6 fundamental fears is the fear of critics. How and where man got this fear is difficult to determine, but it is certain that he has it. If it were not for this fear, men would not go bald. Bald heads come from tight hat bands, which cut off circulation from the roots of the hair. Women are rarely bald because they wear wide hats, but because of the fear of criticism, the man would set aside his hat and keep his hair. Apparel manufacturers were not slow to capitalize this fundamental fear of humanity. Every season's styles change because clothing manufacturers know that few people have the courage to wear a garment that is out of step with what everyone is wearing. If you doubt this, you gentlemen, start down the street with last year's narrow-brimmed straw hat when this year's style calls for a wide brim. Or, you ladies, take a walk down the street on Easter morning in last year's hat. Observe how uncomfortable you are thanks to your invisible enemy, the fear of critics. The 6th and last of the 6 basic fears is the most feared of all. It is called the fear of death. For tens of thousands of. For years man has been asking the still unanswered questions, why and where. The most astute of the race have not been slow to offer the answer to this eternal question. Where do I come from, and where do I go after death? Come to my tent, says one leader, and you can go to heaven after death. Heaven was then imagined as a wonderful city whose streets were lined with folds and studded with precious stones. Stay outside my tent and you can go straight to hell. Hell was then depicted as a fiery furnace where the poor victim could have the misery of burning forever in sulfur. No wonder humanity is afraid of death. And take another look at the image at the beginning of this essay and determine, if you can, which of the 6 basic fears is doing you the most harm. An uncovered enemy is a half-whipped enemy. Thanks to schools and colleges, man is slowly discovering these 6 enemies. The most effective tool with which to combat them is organizational knowledge. Ignorance and fear are twin sisters. They are generally found together. If it were not for ignorance and superstition, the 6 basic fears would disappear from the nature of man in one generation. The remedy for these 6 enemies of mankind can be found in any public library, provided one knows which books to read. Start by reading The Science of Power by Benjamin Kidd, and you will have broken the grip of most of your 6 basic fears. Follow up by reading Emerson's essay on compensation. Then choose some good books on autosuggestion, self-suggestion, and learn about the principle by which your beliefs of today become the realities of tomorrow. Mind in the Making by Robinson will give you a good start toward understanding your own mind. Through the principle of social inheritance, the ignorance and superstition of the Dark Ages have been passed on to you. But you live in a modern age. On every hand, you can see evidence that every effect has a natural cause. Begin now to study effects according to their causes, and you will soon emancipate your mind from the burden of the 6 fundamental fears. Begin by studying men who have accumulated great wealth and discover the cause of their successes. Henry Ford is a good subject to start with. In the short period of 25 years, he defeated poverty and made himself the most powerful man on earth. There was no luck or chance or accident behind his success. He grew out of his careful observation of certain principles that are as available to you as they were to him. Henry Ford is not bound by the 6 fundamental fears. Make no mistake about that. If you think you are too far from Ford to study him thoroughly, start by selecting 2 people you know closely. One represents your idea of failure, and the other corresponds to your idea of success. Find out what made one a failure and the other a success. Get the actual facts. In the process of gathering these facts, you will have taught yourself a great cause and effect lesson. Nothing ever just happens. Everything from the lowest animal form crawling on the earth or swimming in the seas to man is the effect of nature's evolutionary process. Evolution is orderly change. No miracle is related to this ordered change. Not only do the physical forms and colors of animals undergo slow and orderly change from one generation to the next, but the human mind is also constantly changing. Herein lies our hope for improvement. You have the power to force your mind through a rather rapid process of change. In just 1 month of properly directed autosuggestion, you can put your foot on the neck of each of your 6 basic fears. In 12 months of persistent effort, you can push the entire herd into a corner where it will no longer do you any serious harm. You will resemble tomorrow the dominant thought you keep alive in your mind today. Plant in your mind the seed of determination to whip your 6 basic fears, and the battle will already be half won. Keep this intention in your mind, and it will slowly push your 6 worst enemies out of your sight, for they exist nowhere but in your mind. The powerful man fears nothing, not even God. The powerful man loves God, but never fears him. Enduring power never grows out of FEAR. Any power built on FEAR is bound to crumble and disintegrate. Understand this great truth, and you will never be so unfortunate as to try to rise to power through the fear of other people who temporarily owe allegiance to you. Man is of soul and body formed for acts of high determination. On the boldest wing of imagination to soar without tiring, without fear to turn. The sharpest pains to tranquility, and savor the joys that sense and spirit merge. Or is he formed for objection and pain, to crawl on the dunghill of his fears, to shrink at every sound, to extinguish that natural flame of love in sensualism, to know? That blessed hour when on his worthless days the icy hand of death will set its seal, but he fears the cure while hating the disease. One is the man who will be in the future, the other, the man as vice has made him now. Shelley, The Law of Success, Lesson 1. The Master's Mind by Napoleon Hill was presented by Stargate Book. Sound recording copyright 2025 and produced by Stargate Book 2025. All rights are reserved.